Welcome to day 3. Your homework is page 16 and 17 in the packet. You can also be working on your Unit 12 and 13 problem sets, not due till later in Unit 13. You've got a warm-up. Pause the video, give the warm-up a try. When you hit play, a box will pop up for you to insert your answer. So our slope formula, m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Doesn't matter which y you start with, just be consistent. I'm going to do 7 minus 5, so then I would do 3 minus a negative 4. That'll give us 2 in the numerator. These will become pluses, and we'll have 7 in the denominator. So 2 sevenths for our slope. Going over to the homework, we were asked to use midpoint formula for each of these. So we want to prove the diagonals bisect each other. So our hope is that the midpoint of the diagonals will have the same coordinates. So find your midpoint of Km is 0.5, 2.5, or you could have it as fractions of 1/2 and 5/2. When we do our midpoint of NL, we get the same thing. So that's our calculation part. We stated the general formula. We showed our calculation. Now we have to say our summary. So Km and NL bisect each other since they have the same midpoint. Now, if they asked for it, we could have also shown this was a parallelogram because we could have then said that KNML is a parallelogram because diagonals bisect each other. But they didn't ask for that here. So in this one, they do want us to show it's a parallelogram. So we start out like we did in the last one, do our midpoint of each of our diagonals, and you should have got 5, 3 for each of those. And notice, wrote the general formula at the top. That's our calculation part. Now our summary statement, we know ABCD is a parallelogram. Since AC and DB have the same midpoint, they bisect each other, and diagonals bisect each other implies parallelogram. Anything you need to adjust on yours, make sure to adjust. So same thing, we want to prove it's a parallelogram. Just notice we have some variables in the points, but we go about it the same way. So add your x's, divide by 2, add your y's, divide 2 for the one diagonal, GM. We got r plus p over 2 and n over 2. Notice we get the same thing for AE. So then our summary is similar to what we had in the last one. Game is a parallelogram. Since GM and AE have the same midpoint, the diagonals bisect each other. Diagonals bisect each other implies parallelogram. So we'll start on page 13 today, and our topic is proofs using the slope formula, which is why we reviewed the slope formula in our warm-up. Just like the other proofs we've seen, you want to start by drawing and labeling your graph. You're going to state any formulas that you use. In this today, we're going to be working with slope formula, so we'll be stating that a whole bunch. You do all your calculations showing your work, and then at the end you have a concluding statement saying why you have proven what it asks for. So as we showed in the warm-up, our slope formula again is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And that can give us the slope between any 2 points. So how would we use slopes in proofs? Well, just talking in terms of slopes, if we wanted to prove a parallelogram, we could show both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. And the way we would show they're parallel is by showing that their slopes were equal. So we would do the slopes for all 4 sides. We would show the opposite ones have the same slope, which would mean they're parallel. And then that means that we would have a parallelogram. For a trapezoid, we need one pair of opposite sides to be parallel. So we could do our slopes, show that there's one set that have the same slope. That's just a reminder that equal slope tells us that we have parallel lines. To show something's a right triangle with slope, we want to show that there's one right angle. Well, to get a right angle, using the slope formula, we would first want to do some slopes and show that there's negative reciprocal slopes. So say like 2/3 and -3/2. Those are negative reciprocal slopes because the sign is different. That's the negative part. And the reciprocal is that the fraction is flipped. Well, that implies that the two sides then would be perpendicular. And we know that perpendicular lines then implies right angle. And if you have a right angle, maybe we'll add on here, right angle implies right triangle. So those are the main things that we will show with our slope proofs. So moving over to 14, we're given quadrilateral ABCD with the 4 points there, and we want to prove it's a parallelogram using our slope formula. So we're going to start by plotting those. Notice all those points are in the first quadrant. They all have positive x's and y's. So I'm going to draw my xy axis like this. So we're only using the first quadrant so that we have room to plot all of them. And take a moment to plot each of those points and label them. Oops, I misplotted C. C should be right there. So that step, same as our other proofs we've seen. Step 2 is the same as the other proofs we've seen. List the formula that we're going to use. Well, we're going to use the slope formula. So we're going to do m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So step 3, on your paper it's down a ways. And there's not as much work there under that for the calculations. So it's okay. We're going to put our calculations for step 3 right underneath here. So we don't have to scroll down as far. Okay, you can put them in this space if you want, or you can put them above. It doesn't matter, wherever you have enough space. So we've got to find our space of all, or our slope of all 4 sides. So let's start. We're going to do our slope of, oops, I wanted to write it as a subscript. Our slope of AD, let's do. So we're going to use these 2 points. So we'll do y minus y, so maybe 7 minus 3. So notice that's the 7 from D's point and the 3 from A's point. And now we're doing the x's. So 3 minus 2, that's going to give us 4 over 1, or just 4. Well, looking at our picture, that helps us determine, okay, what one should that match with? That should match with the one opposite it, so BC. So let's next do our slope of BC. We'll take one of our y values, 9, minus the other y value of 5, and that's over x minus x, so 9 minus 8. Notice that gives us 4 in the numerator, 1 in the denominator. That reduces to 4. Always reduce the slopes, because if you don't reduce them, you might not recognize that they are the same. Well, now based off our pictures, the other ones we need DC. So using D and C, maybe we'll do 7 minus 9 over 3 minus 9. which will give us -2 over -6. That's not reduced though. A negative divided by a negative will be a positive, and 2, 6 reduces to 1/3. And then the last one we have to find is for AB. So maybe we'll take the y value of 5 from B minus the y value of 3 from A, and then 8 minus 2. That's going to give us 2 over 6, which reduces to 1/3. In the last step, we've got to say what did we find, and therefore what does it prove? So the things we found that AD is parallel to BC, and we found that DC is parallel to AB. Why did we know that? Since their slopes are equal. Well, now based on that, how does that prove what we wanted to prove? We wanted a parallelogram. So we can now say that ABCD is a parallelogram. And you can say either since or because. Either of those are fine. So since both pairs of opposite sides parallel implies parallelogram. And that's it. So the process is very similar to the other ones that we've done. It's just we're using slope formula now. So let's flip over to 15. This time we've got a triangle. And we want to determine with slope that it is a right triangle. Well, notice A is going to be in quadrant 1, and B is going to be in quadrant 2, and C will be on our axes. But notice there's nothing in quadrants 3 or 4. So we can put our x-axis pretty low if we want. So we've got 2, 5 for A. -4, 3 for B. And -3, 0 for C. So our next step is to tell the formula we're going to work with. So it asked us to use slope. So we'll have m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Well, now we got to do our calculations. One thing that's nice about the picture is you can probably look at it and see where it's most likely the right angle is occurring. It looks like the right angle is going to occur at B, so that means we want to do the slopes of BA and BC. So we'll do our slope of BA. So we'll take a y value from B minus a y value from A over the x value from B minus the x value from A. Remember, sometimes you may end up with minus a minus. We didn't have it in this case. But this will give us -2 in the numerator, -6 in the denominator. Negative divided by negative is a positive, and then 2, 6 can reduce to 1/3. The other one we needed was BC slope. So we can maybe take the y value of C minus the y value of B over the x value of C minus the x value of B. So we want to be consistent. In this case, we do have a minus, which becomes a plus. We get -3 in the numerator, and we get 1 in the denominator. So you can either leave that as -3 over 1 or just write it as -3. But we want to notice those are negative reciprocals. They are flipped and negated. So in our summary, we can say that BA is perpendicular to BC, since their slopes are negative reciprocals. So then we need to get to right triangle. So we can say angle B is right, since perpendicular lines implies right angle. And then we can say triangle ABC is right, since right angle implies right triangle. So mostly calculations, but some of our reasons from the earlier proof units come back into play when we write our summary statement. In the summary, you need to talk about what you found through your calculations and what does that now allow us to conclude that leads to what we are trying to prove. Last one today on the bottom of 15. We're given a trapezoid and they give us the bases. If these are the bases, we know those are the ones that are parallel to each other. So in part A, it asked us to find the slope of AD. So we'll maybe start with the y value of A minus the y value of D over x value of A minus x value of D. 6 minus 1 will give us 5. 1 minus 3 will give us negative 2. So that is negative 5 halves. You could have left it as 5 over negative 2. That's the same thing if you wanted. So now we want to express the slope of BC, and it's going to involve K. So we'll do our slope of BC. We'll maybe take, so that we get a positive K value, let's maybe take the Y value of B first. So we'll do 3K minus the Y value of C, which is 2K, over the X value 7 minus the X value 13. So this is going to give us K over negative 6. Well, in C, we want to find the value of K. Because BC and AD were the bases, we know they should be parallel. If they are parallel, they should have the same slope. So we know that negative 5 over 2 should be equal to K over negative 6 because those slopes should be the same. All we're going to do now is cross multiply. 2 times K is 2K. Negative 5 times negative 6 is 30. We cross multiply whenever we have an equal sign separating two fractions. Opposite of multiplication is division. So if we divide by 2, we get K is 15. That's it for this video. We'll see you next class. Don't forget to do the homework for tonight, and if you wanted to work on the problem set, you could as well.